Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the final competition of the 3-minute thesis competition 2020 of HKU. I'm Harrison Lee, a final year student from the Faculty of Science. The 3-minute thesis competition, or 3MT, is an academic competition developed by the University of Queensland in 2008 for research postgraduate students to explain his or her research in 3 minutes to a general audience. Let's enjoy a short video introducing the 3MT.
The most distant galaxy ever observed by human being.
A little bit more of a healthy lifespan.
Oil-based fluid for this technology.
Damage the lung cells, and these lung cells are important.
English teaching in kindergartens. And this is what I do.
Counselors supervising students' ideology.
The HKU 3MT competition was launched jointly by the Graduate School and Knowledge Exchange Office in 2011. This year, we have 20 research postgraduate students participating in the competition. The heat was held online in May, and today we have 9 finalists who are going to compete for 3 prizes. Let me introduce our adjudicating panel to you. Professor John Bacon-Shone, Associate Director of the Knowledge Exchange Office, serving as Chairman of the adjudicating panel. Professor Frederick Leung, Dean of the Graduate School. Dr. Caroline Dingle, Senior Lecturer of the School of Biological Sciences. And our guest of honor, Ms. Ada Tse, Independent Non-Executive Director of Yangtze Foundation Limited. It is a great honor for us to have Ms. Tse on our adjudicating panel. Thank you very much for joining us today. The 3MT final competition of HKU is about to begin. In order to avoid disruption to the candidates during the competition, may I remind you again to turn your mobile phone to silent mode. Please show respect to our candidates and do not leave the venue after the start of a presentation. After each presentation, we will give a few seconds to the judges before inviting the next candidate. May I now invite candidate number 2, Ms. Kimani Chandra Rajan, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Science, to give her presentation on how to save oysters from ocean acidification. Ms. Chandra Rajan, please.
Good afternoon. Most of us love eating oysters. Oysters are an important food resource and are produced around 5.1 million tons every year for human consumption. They are also important ecologically. They can form reef-like structures which are very similar to coral reefs, and they improve biodiversity. They also filter the water that they live in, thus improving water quality. How useful, aren't they? However, they're affected by us. Yes, they are affected by the sister problem of climate crisis known as ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is a phenomenon in which excessive atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by us gets absorbed into the ocean, making it more acidic. Ocean acidification is very well known to negatively impact several marine calcifying organisms, including oysters, especially their shell formation. Understanding the shell formation of oysters under ocean acidification is important for predicting their survival in the future and for planning conservation strategies and to develop sustainable aquaculture techniques. To do this, in my PhD, I grew Hong Kong oysters under 2 different conditions. 1, normal seawater condition. 2, acidified seawater condition. At the end of my experiment, I found that Hong Kong oysters were able to make their shells flawlessly under ocean acidification scenario. While several other marine calcifiers cannot do this, how are Hong Kong oysters doing this? To understand this, I looked at the gene expression and found that several calcium-related genes were highly expressed in the mantle tissue, the tissue that is important for shell formation in oysters. This gene expression data and study will form foundation for conservation strategy planning and to develop sustainable aquaculture techniques. So my study did not just end here. I also found another sad thing. Hong Kong oysters were starting to dissolve under ocean acidification. Their top shell was completely starting to dissolve, which means they will be easy to be attacked by predators such as crabs and snails. So, how are we going to save them? They are affected by ocean acidification, which is caused by us. To stop this, we have to reduce our emission of carbon dioxide. By doing this, we will not just save these oysters, but also ourselves from climate crisis. Will you save the oysters and also ourselves? Thank you.
May I now invite candidate number 10, Mr. Abdullah Hussein, PhD candidate of the Li Ka-shing Faculty of Medicine, to give his presentation on Understanding the Seeds of Cancer. Mr. Hussein, please.
The term carcinoma or cancer was first used to describe tumors back in 400 BC, and yet today, cancer is still a death sentence for majority of the patients who are diagnosed with it. The main challenge in the fight against cancer is the inevitability of cancers coming back as new tumors, even if some of the treatments seem to work initially. One of the ways that scientists have tried to approach this problem is by cutting off the blood supply of tumors in the hopes that they can deprive them of nutrient and oxygen. This strategy, instead of killing off the tumors, made them more aggressive. They started to spread across the patient's bodies and make new tumors. So we asked a simple question: why does cutting off the blood supply of tumors make them or enhance their ability to form new tumors? We looked into liver cancer patients, and we found a molecular switch called ephrin A3 that is activated when there is lack of oxygen. And if we inactivate this switch, the cancer cells lose their ability to form new tumors by almost 2/3. So we were not at all surprised to find out that patients with this switch inactivated live years longer compared to those who have it activated. And compared to this time frame, the current standard therapy for liver cancer provides patients with only 2 to 3 months of overall survival benefit. So clearly, this switch is important. So we next wanted to know, what is this switch for? What does it do in the cancer cells? So we profiled all the changes that happens when we manipulate this switch. And what we found is very revealing. If we activate the switch, the cancer cells start to gather energy, condense it, and store it within themselves as fat. So this is very critical, we think, because this is a commonly used strategy by nature whenever there is a need for a fresh start. For example, the seeds in an apple, the yolk of an egg, and also from our findings, the oxygen-deprived cancer cells within a tumor. They all pack enough energy and resources to jumpstart their new beginnings. The irony is, nature is using the same strategy to give new life in the case of the fruit and the egg, but is also using the same strategy to take away life of cancer patients. We hope that this realization will lead to new kinds of therapies that will stop cancer from being a death sentence. Thank you.
May I now invite candidate number 11, Ms. Jeong, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Dentistry, to give her presentation on Clinical Trial on Restoring Untreated and SDF-Treated Dentine Caries Lesions. Ms. Jeong, please.
How do you like your dentist? The noise made by drills, the unpleasant smell of the clinic make dental visit a nightmare for many people, let alone children. Children are afraid of dentists. Actually, children are afraid of anyone who is wearing mask and gown, no matter how cute your mask is, trust me. But after this COVID-19 pandemic, they may get used to it. After all, everyone is wearing a mask. Anyway, as a dentist, I'm afraid of children too. They are crying and screaming even before stepping in the clinic. I'm so afraid that the drills and needles may accidentally hurt them when they are struggling on the dental chair. Fortunately, a magic solution saves both of us. We don't need needles, we don't need drills, we only need is a small dental brush to paint a layer of SDF on the tooth surface. That is the silver diamine fluoride solution. We call it SDF. The SDF can stop the progress of the dental caries and prevent toothache from happening. This procedure is simple and painless. However, there are still limitations of this magic solution. First, it will leave black stain on the tooth surface, which may cause aesthetic concerns. Second, the cavity is still open and unrestored, which may compromise the chewing ability, and also may trap food debris. So, we are thinking what we can do more to improve the situation. How about we first apply SDF to stop the caries? When the circumstances allow, we can then restore the teeth to improve the appearance and function. It is important to find out whether the prior SDF application will jeopardize the restorations afterwards. So we conducted a randomized control trial. Preschool children with decayed teeth were randomly allocated into 2 groups to be applied with either SDF or the placebo as control. 10 weeks later, all the decayed teeth were restored. We checked the status of restorations every 6 months, and after 18 months follow-up, we found that actually there was no significant difference of the success rate of the restorations between the SDF group and the control group. So, it is fair to recommend that if the children are too young to tolerate the restorative procedure, we can first apply SDF to stop the caries. When the children become older and more cooperative, we can then restore the teeth to better improve the situation. Thank you.
May I now invite candidate number 12, Mr. Schenk, MPhil candidate of the Li Ka-shing Faculty of Medicine, to give his presentation on Cancer's Sweet Tooth, How Glucose Metabolism Reprogramming Supports Liver Cancer Development. Mr. Kam, please.
Good afternoon. Does anyone here like sugar? Yeah, because me too, and so does cancer. For the past century, we've known that cancer cells are constantly craving for sugar. We've always assumed that the only role of sugar is to fuel cancer with energy or molecular building blocks. But today, I'm going to tell you it's more than what we thought. Now, cancer is a very metabolically active tissue, but an active metabolism is also a double-edged sword. So even though it helps sustaining a high energy level, it also creates some really harmful byproducts, which we call reactive oxygen species, or ROS in short. So ROS are basically volatile substances which can oxidize and destroy anything within the cell. That could be cancer cells' DNA, protein, anything vital. So when you think about it, cancer is actually restrained by their own growth, because the faster they grow, the more metabolically active they have to be. Yet the more ROS they produce, the more collateral damage they receive. So our lab is interested in the study of liver cancer, one of the most lethal malignancies nowadays. And we've discovered that a subset of more aggressive liver cancer cells tend to overcome this natural ROS limitation. And all of them share one similarity, the upregulation of a gene called PFK2. What we believe is that PFK2 acts as a molecular switch. It changes the way how cancer processes sugar. So instead of fully generating energy or biomolecules, PFK2 redirects sugar into an alternative pathway where it generates antioxidants, which help stabilizing and eliminating the ROS that they produced. And this fascinating self-detoxification system enables them to grow rapidly without even inflicting harm to themselves. In our experimental mouse model, when we removed PFK2 from cancer cells, they grew significantly slower, and some even lost their ability to form an active tumor. In contrast, when we supply more PFK2 into cancer cells, not only did they grow faster, but they also acquired the ability to resist against anti-cancer drugs. So our study here revealed a novel role of PFK2 in liver cancer development, a unique way of how cancer can rewire the sugar metabolism to deal with reactive oxygen species. And we're really looking forward to translate this into the clinic, where we can more accurately predict patient outcome or even specifically target this cancer metabolic switch to fight against liver cancer. Thank you.
May I now invite candidate number 16, Ms. Nadine Nicole Mouchette, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Education, to give her presentation on English Teachers, Solution to Global Problems. Ms. Mouchette, please.
Why are teachers the answer to all the world's problems? Research across eras continues to show that quality, qualified teachers are the cornerstone of a strong education system. And a strong education system supports a productive workforce, stable economy, and peaceful society. In today's globalized world, we are striving for a sustainable, equitable, healthy, global society, and teachers must be prepared to enact their role. Since it is through language that we enact our identities, express our values, and maintain global relationships, international English language teachers are uniquely positioned to teach more than the grammar, pronunciation, and vocabulary of the global lingua franca. They bring the world to their learners and neighbors in faraway lands. But are they helping to solve global problems? My tri-stage ethnographic action research explored whether nationality, individual competences, and professional learning experiences motivate international English language teachers, Jamaicans, serving in Japan to change their worlds. The online questionnaire of stage 1 showed that the majority of the 47 respondents accepted teaching roles in Japan because they wanted adventure, to jump into a culture vastly different to theirs, and to travel around Asia. They also reported possession of cognitive, interpersonal, and intrapersonal competencies, such as ICT literacy, multilingualism, and adaptability. And they had global concerns. They prioritized peace and conflict, poverty, access to education, racism, and climate change. These findings helped me plan stage 2. A one-week professional learning intervention of seminars, workshops, and community engagements in Hong Kong. Since their priority global issues align with those faced by refugees and asylum seekers, and I was volunteering with that community, I arranged for the Jamaicans to engage with them. In their journal entries, focus group discussions, and later when I visited 4 of them in Japan for stage 3, they continually referenced the time with the refugees and asylum seekers as one of their most meaningful experiences that inspired lessons and conversations with their Japanese learners. Blessed, a research participant said, "My perception of refugees was the barrier. The perception was torn down. They're not always in a devastating situation. They had hopes and dreams. They were looking forward to a brighter future. That was inspirational to me. I hope that ministries of education and universities will adapt my professional learning program to offer international English language teachers in their regions an adventure that exposes them directly to global issues they care about and to better prepare them to change the world by changing themselves." Thank you.
May I now invite candidate number 19, Ms. Jane Richards, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Law, to give her presentation on Inclusion of Mental Disability in the Criminal Justice System. Ms. Richards, please.
The image that appears in the center of the screen is of a middle-aged man wearing a pink suit and a blue tie. He stands behind a long wood-paneled bench of some kind, holding his arm out, underneath the emblem of the Hong Kong national animal, the wild boar. His picture appears in the center of a circle, and the rest of the screen is black. The picture is a little blurry, but apart from that, everything else about who this person is and where he is should be absolutely crystal clear to every one of you today. But what if you don't agree with part of my description? What if there is more than one way of seeing the world? What if you don't know who this is or where he is because you've had a different life experience to me? If that's the case, I ask you to suspend your disbelief for the remainder of my 3 minutes and join me in my singular reality. I put it to you that this man isn't in the center of a circle, but he's standing at the end of a long tunnel. All of us have tunnel vision. Our tunnel vision, our particular way of seeing the world, conditions us in a very specific, quite narrow way. So much so that the rest of this tunnel, the rest of this black area, obscures any other conception of understanding. Now I ask you to imagine that you find yourself standing at the end of this tunnel before this man, but you don't know where you are or what you've done to be here. The penalty for not knowing and not understanding is that this guy has the power to send you to a secure hospital indefinitely. This is the focus of my research. People whose understanding of reality is different to all others. That is, people with mental disabilities, and how to accommodate them in our very particular, quite peculiar criminal justice system. Currently, the law treats people who are found to be insane differently to other offenders. They are sent to a secure hospital, potentially indefinitely. But what my description today aims to show is that we are not all the same. And so rather than maintaining systems and laws that favour particular types of people, people like this guy, the Chief Justice of the Court of Final Appeal of Hong Kong, Geoffrey Ma, what we need to do is not fit the individual into the system, but to build the system around individuals. I aim to imagine a criminal justice system that does not discriminate against particular types of people. Because we are not all the same, and we do not all share the same understanding of reality. By removing our tunnel vision and the blurred lens that obscures any conception of difference, the model that I'm building will better accommodate all people.
May I now invite candidate number 22, Ms. Muyan Wu, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Engineering, to give a presentation on an efficient way to get rid of smells after indoor decoration. Ms. Wu, please.
I believe most of us have the experience that there is a strong smell after the renovation of our house. So what will you do to remove that smell? Well, today I will introduce you an efficient way to remove the smell. The main component of the smell is called volatile organic compounds, VOCs. Long-term exposure to VOCs can cause many harms to human bodies, even cancer or death if the concentration is rather high. So how to remove the smell? Here's the way. You just need to turn on the light and the smell is gone. Seems like magic, right? It's called photocatalysis. Here we need to use some special materials as the catalyst, such as titanium dioxide. With the irradiation of the light, the catalyst can absorb the energy of photons, and some reactive species can be generated to oxidize VOCs into carbon dioxide and water. My research is to further enhance the efficiency of this technology by using VUV light instead of UVC. VUV light has a shorter wavelength and higher energy. It can break down the VOCs directly, and ozone can be also generated to further be used to remove the smell. However, there are some limitations by using VUV. In my study, I revolutionized this technology by tackling 3 of these limitations. Firstly, in practical application, the residence time of VOCs in catalysts is really short, like only 0.1 second. So I use some substrates such as graphene oxide to increase the surface area of the catalyst. By increasing the residence time, the removal efficiency of catalysts can reach over 90%. Secondly, by using VUV light, the catalysts need to have both the functions of utilizing the light and utilizing ozone. To achieve both these two functions, composite materials are usually used. However, I found that a single component catalyst, cerium dioxide, can achieve these two functions. It will be much easier to synthesize, and the catalyst will be much more stable. Lastly, because many processes are involved in my system, so I study the contributions and synergetic effects of these processes to better understand the mechanism of this system. So this is the efficient way I introduce you to get rid of the smell. Maybe one day, air cleaners using my technique can be in market, and I hope you will buy one. Thank you.
May I now invite number 28, Mr. Yage Zhang, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Engineering, to give his presentation on non-wetting droplets. Mr. Zhang, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Droplets are wet. Droplets are wet. What does that mean? Remember in a pouring rainy night when rain heavily flaps on the windows, what stains the window when the sun comes out? Rain droplets. Why? Because droplets are wet. The wetting phenomenon is the ability of a liquid to maintain contact with a solid surface, resulting from intermolecular interactions when two are brought together. This phenomenon sometimes affecting our living quality in a negative way, such as the foggy mirror in a humid day. The same problem also bothers the field of digital microfluidics, which is a technology that manipulates droplets as reactors for different assays. When wetting occurs, carryover could not be prevented and may further induce cross-contamination. Such contamination is vital when we are facing severe public health emergencies, such as a coronavirus pandemic. Scientists have been racking their brains to reduce wetting, for instance, by inventing the hydrophobic surfaces. In my research, I propose a new strategy that can greatly reduce or even eliminate the wetting phenomenon. What do? Simple. I make the droplets non-wetting. The non-wetting droplets can be easily prepared by coating the conventional droplets with a layer of hydrophobic particles. These particles, acting as a compact shell, prevent the direct contact between the inner droplets and the external surroundings. By doing so, these non-wetting droplets show different physical properties and new application prospects than the droplets we see in our daily life. My research mainly focuses on these special particle-stabilized droplets and covers both fundamental studies and their applications as microreactors. As an approach to advanced digital microfluidics, the manipulation of this non-wetting droplet is a must. In my work, by applying electric field, these non-wetting droplets can be triggered forward, backward, or even fusing together to make the reaction happen. More excitingly, I'm able to apply these non-wetting droplets in the field of biomaterials, in which stem cells would proliferate happily and migrate into 3D structures, just like the way they were in the human body. Overall, with my research, these special non-wetting droplets can now be manipulated precisely and applied as stable microreactors in the field of biomaterials and medical diagnostics. Thank you for listening.
May I now invite candidate number 30, Ms. Yueyuan Jeong, MPhil candidate of the Faculty of Social Sciences, to give her presentation on the role of eye movement in multimedia learning. Since Ms. Jeong is currently not in Hong Kong, she will be giving her presentation through Zoom. Please excuse us a few minutes for the setup and testing.
Testing, testing, testing. Okay. With the advancing technology, multimedia learning has become more and more popular. Instead of just listening to teachers in a classroom, now we learn with sounds, text, and animations. While we are less likely to be bored, are we able to process all the sounds, text, and animations at the same time? Or do we have to pick and choose? How do we know which to pick and which to choose? In my research, I examined whether where you look during multimedia learning can predict how well you learn. Specifically, I asked participants to watch science documentary videos with audio narration. They then answered some questions to see how well they learned. In one condition, they watched the videos without subtitles, whereas in the other condition, they watched them with subtitles. I recorded their eye movements when they watched the videos. Using machine learning methods, I discovered two viewing strategies among the participants when they watched the videos without subtitles. Some participants mainly look at the center of the screen, whereas some others look around different parts of the screen. Guess which strategy led to better learning? It was the one that mainly looked at the center of the screen. By looking mainly at the center of the screen, these participants were better able to focus on the audio narration and less distracted by irrelevant visual input. Thus, people learn better with subtitles. In addition to a good viewing strategy, you also need to have good working memory capacity and a good ability to switch attention to different multimedia content in order to have good learning outcomes. However, things become easier when you watch the same videos with subtitles. I found that with subtitles, your learning outcome does not depend on your cognitive ability anymore. This is because subtitles can help to get your attention to the content of the narration, reducing the demands on working memory and the attention switching ability. Thus, people learn better with subtitles. In sum, my research has important implications for education, as it suggests that having subtitles is good for learning from videos. And if there is no subtitle, it's better to focus on the center of the video display. Thank you very much.
All candidates have finished their presentations. May I now invite Professor John Bacon-Shone, Associate Director of Knowledge Exchange Office and Chairman of the Adjudicating Panel, to present the certificates of merit to the finalists. Professor Bacon-Shone, please. May I now invite all finalists to get onto the stage to receive a certificate of merit in recognition of their outstanding performances. Thank you, Professor Bacon-Shone. May I now invite our guest of honor, Ms. Ada Te, to say a few words about the candidates' presentations. Ms. Te, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I really want to thank you for inviting me to join this really interesting competition. And I feel like I'm not qualified because you will all have PhDs and I will be the only person who doesn't have a PhD, even though I ostensibly have a JD from a small school called Harvard Law School, but still, I mean, it's not a PhD, so I'm not a real doctor, so I'm not sure I'm qualified to judge you. But what I found so inspiring is the diversity of the topics that were covered today. And the two words that I always use as the epitome of why education is so important and so magnificent are wonder and awe. And I think in your various choice of topics, I sensed awe in your interest in the subjects and the questions that you posed. I sensed the wonder with which you approached it. And I also sense the wonder that people who are going to read your research will have, extending to maybe even other disciplines and other jurisdictions based on your ideas and concepts. So I am incredibly impressed with the quality of what we heard today. This is a competition, so unfortunately there has to be, I guess, winners. But truly, I think you all should be absolutely proud of the commitment and the intellectual rigor that you have applied to your topics. So, you know, I just wish that I was of your caliber, and maybe one day I'll get around to getting a PhD myself too. So anyway, again, thank you so much to Hong Kong U for giving me this opportunity to be involved. And I'm very curious in terms of, you know, because who was it on? Oh yes, on the legal, the mental health and the legal presentation, we talked about how people all have different perspectives and they all have their own tunnel vision. So maybe the judges, we all have our own perspectives and tunnel visions too. So I don't know if there's going to be any kind of consensus, but we all tried our best with the best of intentions to really encourage and to really award all your great work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Te. May I now invite Professor Frederick Leung, Dean of the Graduate School, to say a few words for us. Professor Leung, please.
Good afternoon. Ms. Jie has just said that we all have different perspectives. So let me first of all declare my own specialism. My area of research is mathematics education. So most of the things that I heard this afternoon is really new to me. And as Ms. Jie said, I find it really fascinating. So you are able to express your research in very clear terms. And as someone who doesn't know any of the kind of research they're doing, I think I learned a lot. And you have very good presentation skills. If there's one thing that I would like to stress is there's something which I think is very important in a presentation like this. And some of you do this better than others. That is, you must have a very strong urge, to tell people what your research is about. My own PhD is on how culture influences mathematics teaching and learning. And I find this a very fascinating topic. Mathematics, such an abstract subject. Actually, culture plays a strong role. I'm not doing my 3-minute presentation here, but I think I'm expecting that kind of urge, that kind of, you really want to tell people about what you're doing. I'm not saying that you should pretend to be like this. First of all, you yourself have to be very interested in the research that you're doing. And then you must have an urge to tell people, share with other people your research. And then the more difficult is that you have to do it in a language that the layman can understand. So most of you, I think, have been doing very well in that regard. But I think if there's one thing that some of you can improve on, is this urge, right? This strong urge, zeal to tell people about your research. I learned a lot, and as Ms. Jie said, there must be some winners and losers, but I think all of you have done a very good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Leung. May I now invite Dr. Caroline Dingle, Senior Lecturer of the School of Biological Sciences, to say a few words for us. Dr. Dingle, please.
First off, excellent job to all of you guys. Really was enjoyable, and I say that as someone who is not very good at listening. I often fall asleep in conferences. I think I was engaged. I was listening to all of you guys. I learned something today, and I think that really says a lot. Especially as the other judges have already echoed, you guys have conveyed a big variety of topics to people with really different backgrounds, and you've done it clearly and with enthusiasm, and really impressive. I think, so I've been teaching at Hong Kong U for almost 10 years now. And one thing that I really, on top of the science, which you guys are all obviously very competent in your fields, on top of that, I say one of the keys to success is being able to communicate clearly. And that's true whether you're writing an academic paper. I always tell students we read bad scientific papers, so I can tell them there's a lot to learn here. Everyone's bad at this. It takes time. But you guys have nailed it already. And I think you really have, that's something to be really proud of. I think it's as important as doing the good science, because if you do good science but you can't communicate it to people, you might as well have just gone to the park and played, right? So I think I don't really be proud of that ability to communicate, and think about it when you're writing your academic papers. Bring that enthusiasm also. Just because we're writing in academics doesn't mean we have to lose that sense of wonder and awe and excitement. So really great achievement to all of you guys, and thanks. It was also very fun. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dingle. May I now invite Professor John Bacon-Shone again to say a few words for us. Professor Bacon-Shone, please.
Okay, so in fact, this is our 10th year, right? 9th? Next year is the 10th year. So I've been doing this from the beginning, and I think I have to say, of all the things I do for the university, this is one of my favorite things to do, because you always have something interesting to tell me, right? So you need to understand that first. So I always like to be critical, though. I always like to think about how we could do things better. But please don't misunderstand. You did great presentations, very interesting things. So some of the things I'm going to talk about have been mentioned by the previous speakers, but I'm going to frame it in slightly different ways. So I think there's 3 areas where maybe it's important for you to reflect on your presentation and think about how you could do it better next time, okay? So one issue is language. So jargon. So what is jargon? So jargon is language that maybe not everybody understands. So I think sometimes we're so used to talking to the people in our own research team that we forget that some of the words we use are not words necessarily understood very well by people outside of our team. So I think one of our previous outside speakers said, imagine you're speaking to your grandma, right? So somebody who knows nothing about your discipline, will they actually understand everything you said? Or are there at least a few words where maybe you could have helped by using a simpler word or explaining what the word meant? Okay, so that's one issue. The second issue is the slide. Now, in fact, my understanding is in Australia, their attitude is the slide is just a pretty background. I don't agree with that. I think you should recognize that the slide is an important bonus point, if you like, for your presentation. Because however well you speak, there are some things where a picture is worth 1,000,000 words or 1,000 words or however many you want. So having a good slide is really important, right? What is the message you're trying to get across, and what is the part of the message which you can't get across very well with words, but where a picture would help? So I think some of you have absolutely wonderful slides. Others of you, I feel, you missed an opportunity a little bit. It's not that anybody's slides were boring, but I didn't necessarily understand something from the slide which I didn't get from what you said. And then the last thing is perhaps the most challenging one. I think this is close to what Professor Leung was talking about. So the way I frame it is about engagement. In other words, did you communicate why this is interesting to me and why you're enthusiastic? So as I say to my grad school students, if you haven't chosen a topic that's interesting to you, you're going to be faced with a boring 4 years or however many years it is, right? So you need to be able to communicate to us why this topic is interesting. And this is the most challenging. And I would have to say, when you go to academic conferences, you often leave feeling, why did that person do that piece of work? It doesn't seem they're interested in it themselves. So most of you did a wonderful job of engaging with us. Some of you, though, I think could do a little bit more. Think about what makes it interesting to someone else. And I think if you put these 3 things together and think about it a little bit harder, then I think you could all be at that very top level. So in fact, we send people off to compete in other competitions. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work this year, thanks to the virus, but I'm sure we will at least have an online engagement in some external competitions. I think there are 2 possible competitions which we may be sending you off to. So these are things for you to learn about. But I think, as Caroline said, this is not just about today's presentation or 3MT, but it's about generally improving your skills of communication. I would have to say, it doesn't matter what you end up doing in life, knowing how to communicate well is always a very important skill. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Professor Bacon-Shom. I'm about to announce the winners of the 3 prizes, the champion, the first runner-up, and the second runner-up. May I now invite Dr. Caroline Dingle to present the second runner-up award. The second runner-up will receive Research Travel Support, or Book Prize, at 3,500 Hong Kong dollars. The second Runner-up is number 11, Ms Jiang, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Dentistry. Her presentation was on clinical trial on restoring untreated and SDF-treated dentine caries lesions, and her supervisor is Professor Edwin Chin Man Lo. Congratulations to Ms. Jiang. Thank you, Dr. Dingle. May I now invite Professor Frederick Leung to present the first runner-up award. The first runner-up will receive research travel support or book prize at 6,500 Hong Kong dollars. The first runner-up is number 19, Ms. Jane Richards, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Law. Her presentation was on inclusion of mental disability in the criminal justice system, and her supervisor is Professor Simon Ngai Man Young. Congratulations to Ms. Richards. Thank you, Professor Leung. May I now invite our guest of honor, Ms. Ada Te, to present the Champion Award. The champion will receive research travel support or book prize at 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. The champion of the 3-minute thesis competition 2020 of the University of Hong Kong is number 22, Ms. Mu Yan Wu, PhD candidate of the Faculty of Engineering. Her presentation was on an efficient way to get rid of smells after indoor decoration, and her supervisor is Professor Yu Chong Dennis Leung. Congratulations to Ms. Wu. Please remain on stage for a photo with all the winners. To mark this memorable occasion, may I now invite the first and second runner-ups onto the stage, along with Ms. Bernadette Choi, Associate Vice President, Development and Alumni Affairs, and Executive Director of HKU Foundation. Professor Frederick Leung, Dr. Caroline Dingle, and Professor John Bacon Schoen to come onto the stage for a group photo. Please remain on stage. May I now invite all finalists to join us on stage for another photo. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations again to all the candidates for your excellent performance today. Apart from the 3 awards, the Online People's Choice Award will also be open for voting from Friday 26th of June until next Thursday 2nd of July. Details will be announced on the 3MT website on Friday. You are invited to vote for the most engaging presenter for this award on YouTube. The finalists receiving the most likes on YouTube will also be awarded a book prize of $130. On behalf of the event organizers, we would also like to invite you to complete the online evaluation form. Please scan the QR code and complete the form. The organizers would very much value your feedback. We would like to extend our deepest appreciation to all our judges and guests for being with us here today. It's been my pleasure to host the HKU 3-minute thesis competition. Thank you very much for your support, and see you again next year.